Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Fly With Us podcast. This podcast is bringing the art of conversation, self-love, self-care, mental health care and protection, life lessons, love lessons, and everything in between. I'm Lady Bounce.
And I'm Picket Fence.
And today we're going to talk about write out your heart. So write your heart out. We have two fantastic guests, and I will let them introduce themselves.
I'm Chyrel Jackson.
And I'm Lyris Wallace.
All right. So you ladies write books, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Picket, give us the mindfulness minute so we can get into these ladies' books.
All right. The true meaning of power. I resolved to stop thinking from my divine mission. Stop shrinking from my divine mission. I will become a force of peace healing in my world. I heal myself so I can heal others. We are all vectors of transformation for building of a more just and compassionate world, but we often shrink from our divine mission. We tell ourselves that we are powerless and unworthy, but this excuse making of manifestation of self-will, the divine process in nature wants us to have all the power at our disposal to create harmony between people and between species.
I like that.
Word up.
So Picket, have you ever felt like you had to shrink yourself to fit in?
I would say, yeah, I say a lot of times. I mean, because, you know, if you work in corporate America, which I worked in corporate America for many, many years, you know, you feel sometimes like you have to shrink yourself, like you're supposed to be quiet. And then sometimes you feel like you have to really show out to be accepted. So it's a shrinking and a, you know, like, is this a time to stand up for myself? And a lot of times we choose not to stand up for ourselves. We're just like, well, I'll play the background and just let it be what it be. How about you?
I think so. I'm coming out of my shell more now as I get more letters behind my name and more accolades in the world of education. I'm coming out of it more where I'm really trying to show out now. Whereas before I'm like, well, let me just play the back. Let me just go over here and do this. But, you know, they say quiet women very seldom make history. And I'm trying to make history. So I got to be loud and proud and out there.
Word up. Word up. I like that. How about you, ladies? Do you ever feel like you have to shrink yourself in this world that we live in?
Yes. Absolutely.
I think more so when I was younger, but now, not now. I think that most Black people will find that they are, how you want to say, you're bilingual. You're assimilationist. When you're in a corporate situation, you assimilate to your surroundings, and then because we all know that we act different when we're around our people. And when you're around other people, you sort of kind of take it down a little. You know, you don't want to offend anyone or make someone nervous or upset, you know, stuff like that. My son, he jokes about it all the time. When he is around Caucasian people, he'll say, I got to take the bass out of my voice. I don't want to scare him, you know, because my son has a deep, you know, robust voice. And so he kind of, you know, takes it down, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've had to teach our children for.
Yeah.
Take off your hat, take off your hood, talk with less bass in your voice, because you don't want to be seen as intimidated. So I think that, yeah, we do shrink ourselves. What about you, Chyrel?
I don't remember a time when I didn't shrink myself, and that's almost comical to me because I am 6'2" without a shoe on. So for me to have to shrink myself, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've been told that I'm very intimidating in corporate America, or just, you know, whatever. So yes, I would agree 100% with that.
So the reason I chose that, because reading over you all's bios, you talked about writing to empower men and women. And I think that is something that is much needed, especially in our community. I think it's gotten better over the last few years. Like you said, we feel kind of like an empowering movement, but I think you all writing and others writing, it keeps the fuel in the engine.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into the book. This is your second book together, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So let's talk about the new book first. Tell us all about the new book.
Well, the new book is very much a piggyback of the first book in that we tell a story of sisterhood. And in book 2, which is the book we're talking about right now, we still have the same impenetrable bond of sisterhood. It is a bond that just cannot be broken. And so we love each other and we support each other as women. My sister is not my competition because I see her as I see myself. And that transfers into how we see and view the world. I very much am all about supporting other authors and other writers. I think there's room for all of us. I don't want to spend my time in competition that doesn't exist. So I would just rather, even in our story that we're writing now and that we tell, we talk about in everything that life throws your way. If you have one person in your corner, which happens to be my sister Lyris, that's all you need. And so that's basically, we use language and we celebrate our heritage, our culture, our ethnicity. We're unashamed of Black speech patterns, which is why a lot of the poems are written in Black dialect, because we celebrate our rhythmic speech patterns. We celebrate our, what people would call our hair that defies gravity. You know, we celebrate our ethnicity. And so that is what our books are about. They are a celebration of Black life, Black heritage, Black culture.
Yeah, that's throughout both books. More specifically, this book deals with, what we were basically going through in 2020. So we have a lot of poems about what was coming across the TV to us. Like current events. We deal with. I'm sorry, my cat. We deal with COVID. We deal with the whole George Floyd thing. We deal with all the current events, and plus, at the same time, we're dealing with the death of our father. So a lot of the poems, the book is sort of his book, because we tell it, our father was very much into the blues. So as a dedication to him, we use the blues as our chapters. And, we both had very complex relationships with our father. And you sense that in the poems that we wrote. Now the whole book is not about him, but he's, in quite a bit of it.
The presence of him is
right.
Interwoven in the story that we tell of our bond of sisterhood.
I like it. Now I already wanted to read it, but now I really want to read it. So first, let me offer my condolences on the loss of your father. I also lost my father about 8 months ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So when you said, the complex relationship, I loved my father dearly. But there were some moments that, now that he is gone, and you have to reconcile and go, right. Yes, he was two different people, or he was three different people. And he was all of these things, both good and bad. So
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I definitely understood. I'm like, oh, yep, that sounds like somebody else I know.
I've often said that we confront and reconcile the boogeyman that we've dealt with in life. It's just hard to do when that person is your own father. Okay. And so my sister and I deal with that very volatile relationship. And we both had different relationships with our father, but I would have to say that I think I got maybe a little bit of the better parts of him than my sister did, because my sister and my dad didn't really like each other until he died, until he was dying. And that's when I guess he kind of made peace with how he had been to my sister, which was pretty awful.
Wow. Now, are you two his only children, or you have siblings?
Oh no, we have. It's almost like that Irish twin thing that Caucasian people have. They have two sets of kids, and they're almost like 10 years apart. So that's what my parents did. We have an older set of siblings. My older brother, he's now deceased, but we have an older sister that's almost 10 years apart from us in age. Mm-hmm. She's older than we are.
They were a year apart, and then my parents didn't have any children until like 9 years later, and then they had Cheryl, and then they had me. So Cheryl and I are only a year apart.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
There's 9 of us in my family. My parents had a yours and mine and ours story, so we were the Brady Bunch on steroids. So what got you started in writing? Like, what made you say, like, okay, I have all of this pain, I have these issues, I have these thoughts, let me write them, let me put them in a book, let me start to write poetry? Well, like, how'd you get your start?
We have 2 different ways. I'm going to tell you mine, and then I'll briefly tell you my sister's. I always wrote about things. I just always, that was my way of dealing with stuff. So I would write them down in journaling and start journaling and write different poems. But I had an audience of one, which is my younger sister, Lyris, who was my biggest fan. And she was such a supporting force. And I would read them to her, and she'd just be kind of all excited about it. And so I'd always written. So that's kind of my story, just journaling and writing stuff. Lyris also journaled and started writing stuff down. She just didn't start as early on as I did, but she always wrote. So she would write things like show treatments and things of that nature, and stories, romance novels.
I had a delusion of being the next Spike Lee. I was gonna put Spike Lee in his place and show him what real. But every time I would write a screenplay or something, I would say, "Oh, this is the best stuff I wrote," and then I would, put it away for about a month and a half, and I come back and like, "Oh, this is trash," and it kept happening. There was never a play where, "Oh, this is really good." So by the time I was in my 30s and I started, things were happening in my life, and I felt like I was on this treadmill, and I was trying to run on this treadmill to catch up with my life, and I couldn't do it. So I said, I need to understand myself. So then I said, I'm gonna journal. And I started writing in the journal, and the first couple of entries, I went back and I read them, and I was like, ooh, they kind of read like a poem. They got a rhythm to it. I said, oh, I like that. So I kept doing it. So every time I would make a journal entry, I would make it into a poem. And that's how we came up with the book, the first book.
I like it. Because most people don't think about it that way. They just like, oh, I just wrote one day and woke up and became a writer. Like, no, there was a process.
Mm-hmm.
No, yes.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that really helped Lyris and I out a great deal. We were Black kids that grew up in a predominantly white suburb. And so what happens when you are Black growing up in a predominantly white suburb is that all of your experiences outside of your immediate home life, are with people that don't look anything like you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite difficult, honestly, relating in a lot of ways, because sometimes you just need to inhale and be able to say, I'm okay, I'm at peace, and not feel like an alien or feel like you're,
fitting into a world that don't want to fit with you.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, we didn't have things like Black imagery and Black images in books until we went off to college. When we went off to college, that was a scholastic literary awakening unlike anything that we had ever experienced in our life, because we were reading Nikki Giovanni, oh my God, ego tripping. And we were reading Maya Angelou and Sonia Sanchez that were writing these amazing Black feminine anthems for Black women that looked like my sister and I. And so once we got outside of Judy Blume and outside of the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and Edgar Allan Poe for the first time, we lost our minds, because Black literature was like, it was speaking to us about us.
Right.
And so we began to just, that felt like home. That was like, oh my God. And we just stayed in those books. And to this very day, people always say how much our writing reminds them of the people of that time, because we just didn't put it down. So even the stories that we're telling and the poems that we're writing, they're very reminiscent of what James Baldwin and those people were writing about. It's just indicative of what is happening to us in our time.
Yeah, it's 30 years later for me from college, and I'm still in awe of those writers. I remember the first time when I heard Nikki Giovanni, I lost my mind. I was never the same. I was like, who is this woman? Where has she been? What is going on? and that was the first time I was interested in actually learning. You know how you go to school because you have to. Your parents say you have to. So, my father told us, if we don't go to school, we have to get out. So and to be honest, to tell you the truth, that's the only reason I went to college in the first place, because he gave us that ultimatum, but then when I got in there and I started taking these literature courses, I lost it, and I just wanted to be a part of it. I experienced Wallace Thurman and Ralph Ellison and James Baldwin, who I just adore. Both my sister and I just love this man, and we were never the same.
Now, did both of you go off to college, or did you go to college locally?
Chyrel went to DePaul University in Chicago, and I went to Columbia College in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are both big schools that you would be exposed to a lot more than living in the suburbs. Because I also grew up sort of in the suburbs. I grew up in a project that was implanted in the middle of a suburb.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking to maybe 200 kids in the school and 20 Black kids.
Oh, wow.
So I know that feeling that you feel like, school was like, you didn't even want to go to school. You were anxious to get back home just so you could be comfortable around your people. Because, only having 28 kids, you basically only seeing each other in between classes. You're not in classes together. So you can't wait to get back home just so you have that togetherness. And like you said, I didn't have like the information until I went to college, and then you just get blown away.
Right.
I and Lady Bounce eventually ended up at HBCU, so you really just get blown away. It's a culture shock.
Yes.
And did you guys experience that as soon as you got to school? How long did it take for you to get blown away once you got to college?
Well, it was so automatic, because that's what we missed. I mean, when you look around a classroom and there may be 3 or 4 other Black kids in a classroom with you in your classes, you know, but you don't really have, because they don't want to really have that much to do with you because you're not speaking in dialect. You're not using the hip, you know, vernacular, and you're not using the broken, you know, the broken English. So you look foreign to them because your parents are insisting that you say your T's and pronounce your, you know, your phonetics.
You use the King's English.
The King's English.
Right. Well, like we were not allowed to say yeah or no. You know, he would say, no. What did you say? And we would have to say yes and no.
Right.
You know, so our dad was very particular about that. You know, so when we went to college, I'm gonna tell you, we flocked to it. We missed it so bad that when we graduated and we got our first apartment, we came back to the city. We weren't gonna stay out there. We came back to the city. We used to think that the city was so far away because our parents would only take us into the city on the weekend. And they would take us to our grandmother's house, who lived on the west side of Chicago. And she would only let us out. Now, I don't know if you guys know anything about the west side of Chicago, but baby, let me tell you, that is no way you want to be walking down the street. So my grandmother would only let us out on the front porch. We couldn't go beyond the front porch. So we were thinking that the city was just, you know, this long distance place. And you know, it was infamous and scary and all this stuff. And then when we got to college and we were actually downtown Chicago, and we're looking at all the the skyscrapers and all of this, we're like, this is not so bad. And then when we finally moved out of our dad's house, that's where we came to the city. And I'm still here.
Yeah, I know Pickett is his whole family is from Chicago. And so he spent some summers back there. So when you talk about the city, that's all he talks about. Like, we live in Ohio now, and he's always like, I miss the city. I miss the big city. And I'm like, well, go ahead and have it, player. I like little slow Ohio, right where we at.
I like to visit, but I would not like to live in a big city anymore. I mean, I love Chicago. I love Detroit. I love New York. I love to visit them. I don't want to live in a big city. I mean, maybe it'd be different now because our kids are one's grown and one's almost grown, but I wouldn't want to have kids in a big city. That's the reason I ended up in Ohio. My mother's like, I had 2 kids in Chicago. You're not going to be raised in Chicago.
Yeah, that's how our father felt. He wanted us, you know, in the south suburbs. And at that time, that, you know, his generation, to be able to afford a house out there in the south suburbs, that was an accomplishment for me.
Yes.
And you know, so my father is old school, and he was kind of vain. And so he not only did he get the house in the suburbs, but he had to get the biggest house on the block to show people, see, I made it. You know, my dad was that kind of guy. And so he was gonna have us out there, you know, and it's kind of pitiful because we took advantage of it and we appreciated it. But our oldest sister that wasn't her thing. That was not her thing at all. She did not take to suburban life.
So it has its pluses, I guess.
Yeah, it has its pluses and has its minuses. I know that, you know, and like I said, now that our kids are almost adults, I'll often think like, man, maybe we should have moved in the suburbs instead of staying in the city. But nah, it's cool. I think we did okay. So what I want to ask is, now we're coming closer to our time, is what do each of you do for self-care?
Well, I obviously write, and I'm a physical fitness fanatic, so I love to do exercise as well. and read. I'm an avid reader, so you'll find me doing any of the three.
And I self-medicate in a couple of ways. I love music. So you can find me at any time listening to soul music, the blues. I listen to reggae. I love some heavy metal. I love, I just love music. So I will self-medicate with that. And I just started learning and taking vitamins because, I hate taking pills. It's just something that I just hate doing. But you have to learn the value of like vitamins and things that can help you. Like I'm discovering turmeric. And let me tell you, since I have discovered it, my joint pains, baby, they have gotten much better. Because I asked my sister, I would tell Cheryl, I said, Cheryl, girl, I woke up one morning, I could hardly get down the stairs. But I started taking, vitamins and stuff like that, and it's getting much better.
That's good. Turmeric is a very incredible herb. You just got to remember to have pepper with it too, because pepper makes it flow throughout your body to make sure that they transmit throughout your whole body.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I buy turmeric in a bag. Nobody else eats it, so it lasts a long time but me. But I try to incorporate it in food or smoothies. But even if you don't put pepper directly in it, follow it up with some food that has some pepper. It's just like they say salt's bad for you, but if you have sea salt, it helps deliver the rest of the minerals throughout your body. So that's
I knew something was about this turmeric because after my father died, and we went in his kitchen, and I opened up his cabinet. There were all these things of turmeric. I'm like, what is going on? What is this about? And then I started seeing all of this stuff on turmeric. I was like, well, maybe it's something to that. I think I should have took that out of his cabinet.
So that's going to be the self-care assignment for this week. Reading and music, which are some of our favorite ones too, because we're both heavily into music. I'm a recording artist and Bounce is a DJ. So that's something that's to us. She's also a intervention specialist. So reading is fundamental. So two great self-care assignments for you this week will be find a good book to read and find some good music to listen to. Now we're going to get into my favorite part of the show. Doom, 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 doom. Brain science.
All right, so we know that writing can be therapeutic. So here are 12 surprising benefits of writing down your thoughts and feelings. So first, it clears your mind and readies you for decision making. People make lists all the time. You make pros and cons of dating, places to go. So clears your mind, helps with decision making. It clarifies underlying emotions. When you get those feelings out, you get to process, is this anger? Is this hurt? Is this jealousy? When you see it in print and see it on paper. My favorite, it gives you a record of your development. So Lyris, you were talking about those scripts that you wrote. When you went back, you looked and they weren't as good. It gives you a record of how far you've come. And now you're publishing books. You gain a sense of fulfillment. It's extremely satisfying when you write down your thoughts, and it results into insights into yourself. You learn more about yourself the more you get out of your own head, as they say. It helps you to enter the unknown. When you write things down, you set a process in motion that is pure magic, and then you can enter a world of possibility. It helps you to take action. There is something about writing your thoughts down and not living with them in your head that allows you to take the steps you need to address certain problems or issues, be it something that involves someone else or something that is strictly involving you. Writing it down helps you process all that. Writing makes room for higher levels of thinking to take place. When you write things down, you learn new words. You go look up words, and it takes you to more clarified thinking, which is higher order thinking, which is what teachers want out of students, is that higher order thinking. Writing gives you time and space to process deep-seated emotions, especially when it comes to dealing with people and processing your feelings about complex people in your lives. Writing definitely helps to clarify those emotions and those feelings. Writing lets you tell your own story from your own point of view. No one can write your story but you, and no one can write it as well as you because it is your story. Writing helps you to feel like you have accomplished something. When you put pen to paper and you see the product of your efforts, you're automatically going to feel better about yourself. Those feel good endorphins start to flow because you're like, girl, you did that. So, writing lets you dream bigger than you would if you were just saying it out loud. When you put it on paper, it's something about seeing it in print. Your brain and your mind make that connection that I can do this. If I can write it, I can do it. I can see it. I can achieve it. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, writing helps you create a routine in your life. If you write a little bit each day in the morning or at night, before you know it, you will have established a new habit. You may have written that new movie. You may have written that new book if you write a little bit every single day. So the first thing that I would like, if you're just starting your writing process, do a brain dump. Write down everything that's on your mind, good, bad, or otherwise, and just look at it. Process it where you can, compartmentalize it if you can, and if you can't, then that's fine too. But the point is to just write it down, get it out of your head. The most popular form of writing is personal journaling, and a lot of people still create blogs for others to read. Whatever you decide, the point is to just start writing.
Yes.
Word up. And before we get out of here, we please tell the people where they can get your book and how they can support you, and any type of social media contacts that you want to put out there. Let the people know how they can get at you.
Okay, if you hit our website, which is Sisters, SISTERS, Rock, ROC, as in Nancy, Rhyme, RHYME.com, sistersrockandrhyme.com. You will be able to access all of our social media handles. So sistersrockandrhyme.com, that's our website, and it will give you every single social media handle that we have: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Facebook, all of it is there. And our book is available on Amazon. So,
and on the 25th of July, we're having a virtual launch party for our book, Mirrored Images. So everyone is welcome to join us at that time, and we hope to see everybody there.
Cool. That sounds great. And for people that want to follow us, you can follow us on any social media too: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok now. To listen to the podcast, you can find the podcast anywhere else you find any podcast that you want to listen to. We're on that same format. So this is your boy Picket Fence.
I'm Lady Bounce. And on behalf of our guests, thank you very much. Please come back and do another show with us. We would love to have you back.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Oh, definitely. We out of here. Peace.
We out of here.
Bye-bye.